So we don't have a speaker per se today, but the topic is about how we keep the flame of Cornishness alive with the next generation. Um, this is a topic that's kind of near and dear to my heart. It just came up in a conversation I was having with a fellow over in Cornwall the other day when we were talking about our daughters and children. And I thought, well, let's just have a call and talk about what we're doing individually, just kind of share ideas. I put together a slideshow of just kind of what I want to try to accomplish. Let me share that. Hold on one second. Can you see my screen? There's just a few bullet points.
Yeah, it looks good.
Sure. Yeah, so I think just three things I'd like to talk about with everybody is how did you personally come to your love for your Cornishness? Was it from being born and raised in Cornwall through your parents or grandparents, great grandparents? How did you get there? What do you do to share that love with your family members, both your brothers, sisters, parents, but more importantly with your children, grandchildren? And then the question of what can our organization do to help keep that flame alive? What should CHS be doing? What programming, what services can we be offering to help in this area? So that's really what I wanted to talk about and get everybody's thoughts on it. So with that, I'll just kick it off and see who wants to share some thoughts on those topics.
Free when the pressure to the next one. He said last night that he's seen a lot of his own.
I'll be willing to, as far as how I came to love my Cornishness, I don't know how to answer that because it just seems so just a natural part of being who I am. It's just I've very much enjoyed it. And the second question, as far as sharing with the family, both of my kids and two out of my three grandkids I've taken to Cornwall. So they've had firsthand experience, and also just overlap from my own issues, my own research and things like that. And what was the third one?
Just what can we do as an organization to help keep this alive? Are there programs or services that Cornish American Heritage Society should be thinking about or offering to our members to help in this area?
That's a toughie. I'll pass on that for now.
Great. Who wants to jump in next?
I'll go, but I don't have much to say, Johnny. Margaret here. Really, I came to the Cornish part very late, because my mom growing up, because of the age span in the family and things, and her great-grandfather dying before she was even born, that whole history, that heritage really never came down until really I started diving into the genealogy and understanding where it was. Being that the German side was probably more predominant. Even there, we didn't get a lot of the traditions that came down, certain ones. But, just from what I've been learning, family-wise, yeah, probably not really much there at all. My sister and brother, I keep them informed. Mom passed away several years ago, so she was always happy when I learned it. But she was interested in learning she made Cornish pasties once in her life. I remember that. But that was the extent of it. We kind of knew it was there. And that was pretty much it. How we keep people interested, that is a very good question. And it made me think about something because in the town I live in, Watsonville here in California, we have a large Croatian population. There's a Japanese population, of course, the Hispanics. And it would be interesting, and I'll have to talk around with people to see what some of their programs have done, on keeping the, how they've handled keeping the kids interested. And I know one thing that's very predominant in Hispanic culture is like the dance. the kids dancing and things of this nature. That's always a big thing. Kids start dancing, so that's part of it too. And I remember my sister was doing that when she was in grammar school with the Croatian kids. They would all go and they would learn how to do dance, the folk dancing. So I think that's just something just off the top of my head is, what are those traditions that can be presented in such a way, say, hey, we can do those here.
Great. Thanks, Margaret.
Sure.
I'll be happy to go next. This is Greta. As far as Cornishness, I grew up with my grandparents living close to me, and they were both born in Cornwall and came to the U.S. in 1915. They met in Ironwood, Michigan, and married there. My great-grandparents were living in Ironwood when I was growing up, so they had immigrated as well with my grandma. So, I mean, Cornish stuff was all over the place as far as that goes. My dad fully Cornish, my mother fully Finnish. So I had both cultures and kind of kept in touch with both. I heard Finnish when I went with my mother to her mother's because everybody still was speaking Finnish. But when I went with my dad or whatever to visit my other grandmother in town, it was all a lot about Cornish. My great aunts, they all had very thick Cornish accents at the time. Our church was primarily Cornish. So I had a really good Cornish background. My grandparents visited Cornwall. They went back to their homeland in 1957, 58. They went for 4 months, I believe, and they brought back things. And I had relatives in Cornwall, so I kept in touch with them. I had a cousin about my age with whom I kept in touch, so we were pen pals. She was a little bit younger than I, and when I outgrew my stuff, they were sent to her in Cornwall. So I had that background. And how I shared with my own daughter, well, I took her to Cornwall twice. We started the Keweenaw the group from the Calumet area, Calumet Houghton, and we did a couple of gatherings, and my daughter was part of those. My nephew got involved. He was the Abias. So, we'd all attend these things. We'd go to the gatherings in Ely. We had hosted a couple of gatherings in Calumet. We had the choirs come over and we hosted them at our home. So my daughter and some of my relatives got involved in that. But as far as the grandkids, now you're talking about Heinz 57 here. These kids are not pure Cornish. I mean, my grandkids have part Finnish from me, part Cornish. And that Cornish, over the years, they've determined through DNA that I've got a little bit of some other things in there. But as far as I can trace back, they all came from Cornwall. Then my husband is Slovak. Then my daughter married a guy who is mostly Scot on one side and German and Dutch and whatever. I have a little bit of everything. So when you ask my grandkids, when I show them their DNA, a couple of them hardly show any Cornish DNA. The Finnish stuff seems to be predominant. And then the Scot from their dad. So it's not that they're not interested. They know how to make pasties. They all learned that. And they love them. They were in Europe. They did not visit Cornwall, that they were stationed over there. They enjoy learning about things, but as far as the rest, I'm not sure. I think as a teacher, I've always figured this: if you want the kids to do something, don't tell them what you're planning for them. Let them plan it. Ask them what would work for them. So maybe we could somehow get a group of youngsters at one of these gatherings and ask them, what do you think? How do you think it would be, or what would be a way that you would continue to be interested in Cornwall and your Cornishness? I know the Finnish group in the Copper Country has language groups, and they also do folk dancing, and they're a very lively bunch. But the Cornish, we didn't have anything. We had Keweenaw, but we had my daughter was the only kid that ever attended, as far as I can remember. And of course, that's still going strong. I just don't live there anymore.
Mhm.
So that's my piece.
Thanks, Greta.
Yeah. I can actually speak to the youth component of this. Uh I'm on the older end of the youth spectrum, but yeah, most of my friends, my Cornish friends are still in like Wreath, which is the youth wing of Mebyon Cerno, and the Party for Cornwall, and then also the youth group um, of the Coethus, the Cornish Language Association, or Cornish Language Fellowship, excuse me. Um, so one of the things that we have been doing is, as I've mentioned towards the start of this, actually before the recording began, is a decolonization circle where and this is entirely 20 somethings and 30 somethings who are getting together to discuss the the political, the social, the cultural, threats, and also our traditional culture, really drilling down into what Cornish traditional worldviews and practices, customary law, what it actually is, what it tells us about who we are as a people. And what is really like authentically Cornish. And I know that's sort of like authenticity is, I don't know if anyone here is familiar with the language debates, but um that's definitely uh yeah, authenticity. What is that? But just like looking for what is it that our ancestors believed, and how can we restore that to our lives? Um, so these are the sort of things that really animating our discussions. And so we're building a cultural toolkit. This is the list of brainstormed items that we came up with. And it's things like music and dance, but also like religious histories, our heritage crafts, which ones are endangered, which ones are in, need of young people to come and carry them on. Um, looking at also things like moral frameworks, and and what folklore says about all of these different aspects, not just folklore siloed off to one side, but also like looking at folklore in terms of Cornish hedges, folklore in terms of sex and gender, folklore in terms of fishing and burial practices, what do we believe about the dead, on and on and on and on, all of these things. And this is what is, there's just like this electricity in the room, and people are slipping into using our Cornish language too during these sessions. And I think that's also a big motivating factor for us, is that not only is, there's something to be excited about, but there's like this whole system in which we can express ourselves in, right? And so I think from a youth perspective, I would say that people are really looking for a connection back to their ancestors. And language is a huge part of it. language is one of the keys to a lot of this, I would say, is promoting the language, which in turn also promotes the cultural values and the identity, and the history that kind of ties us all together.
Are your meetings in person or online?
They are actually online. I do
Okay.
them via Zoom, because we're all in different places. I'm here in Seattle, um, and uh, and when I'm not in Seattle, I'm in Norway, which is uh, also not Cornwall. And a lot of us live in Wales. We've got a couple of people in Cornwall itself. And yeah, I think it's mostly people, a couple of people in the US, a couple of people in Cornwall, a couple of people in Wales.
Okay.
And we're all Cornish. It's a Cornish only circle.
Great.
Great.
Yeah, there was interest. There was some expressed interest in our upcoming gathering about having some children's programming, but we couldn't figure out how to pull that off. We're not offering anything specifically for children in Mineral Point. I'm not sure if any children were people were planning to bring any children, but
Mm-hmm.
we can imagine a future that would be beautiful where there was children's programming and people were bringing their children and grandchildren to these events. But frankly, like attendance has been shrinking over time, and I don't think we're going to have any kids anyways. But
Well, and I would suggest that you then target the young people, the youth. And when I say youth, I'm talking about more like in the EU, youth does oftentimes extend, go from 13 up, but the upper range of youth is like 30.
Young adults.
yeah,
Yeah,
Young adults.
Well,
Young adults.
yeah, so we say Yonkers youth in Cornish. So yeah, I would definitely be looking at trying to grab the youth generation, the Gen Z, Gen Z, which are the ones who the older portion of that are the ones who are having kids right now. And so you kind of have to cater to that demographic. And unfortunately, part of the issue is economic. And I know that you have some pretty good scholarships for like traveling to Cornwall, but I know that a lot of people in my generation are doing much worse economically than previous generations. And so we may want to look into lower barrier of entry for things, and having more of events that are lower barrier of entry more frequently in more places, so you can attract people who may not have enough, may not have money to like take time off from work and travel somewhere, especially because there are a lot of people who are no longer concentrated in those core areas of initial Cornish settlement.
If
good.
you're from Seattle, can we get you connected with the Cornish or Pacific Northwest Cornish Society?
Sure, yeah.
Uh, I think that it would be really interesting to have you speak to us.
Okay. Yeah, totally. Yeah, yeah,
Like
I would.
Greta and me, you can see by our hair, we're not a young group, but
Yeah. I was actually looking at coming to your picnic with a friend of mine who's a
that would be
Cornish
nice.
speaker. So, because there's two of us who like live and or work in Seattle who are either learning Cornish or speak it fluently. So, yeah, I would love to talk to you guys more about what I'm doing and um, some of the like in the indigenous connections, because the community that I'm most connected to is actually the Northern Sami community. So like I come at this from a very like indigenous perspective. Um And I have had a lot of people who, young people, young Cornish people my age, who've really resonated with that. Of, coming at approaching Cornish culture from the perspective of like an indigenous person. And so
Great. It looks like we've made a connection there that could be pretty
Yes.
fruitful.
yeah.
Get your
That's
contact
good.
info.
Yeah.
Yes,
I'm gonna make a comment here on organizations in general, because I belong to the California one here, and they're losing, people get older. I belong to a couple of at least one church organization. And I joke because it's supposed to be called the Young Ladies Institute, but everybody, I swear, is over the age of 75 or something, So it's a hard time and like, it's like all these service groups, like I think the Elks Club in our town is going to kind of like going by the wayside. They have a beautiful building, but there's no kids involved. So I think it's just a general, it's like, how do you get young people involved with any type of group now? Because everybody is glued to the phone, and, in things of this nature, they tend to do that.
Yeah.
And to mention the economic factors.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people besides the young people suffering right now from the economics. And I'll tell you right now is Santa Cruz County is very difficult for people to live here. The median income that you have to be able to afford anything and to pay rent is like $85,000. We're one of the most expensive, or $85 an hour, $85 an hour. It is the most expensive place to rent in the country. So, people are just struggling here. And it's a struggle for a lot of working people just even to take the time to travel and do things, because they're trying to make ends meet.
Yeah.
And it's just not, it's everybody. It's, people, the elderly now are being faced with having to work longer now too. Retired people, because they can't make their ends meet either. So it's an economic thing that spreads across all age groups now.
Yeah. And I'm definitely not saying that other generations don't face issues. I'm just saying that I know people who are working 3 jobs, and they're still month to month near homelessness. So I'm definitely not trying to imply anything. I'm just saying that there's this economic factor, and the response should be, or at least the response that we have found, because I'm also involved with the left-wing bilingual Cornish blog Sorodja, which means rebellion.
Yeah. One thing I'm going to say, though, right off the top, I think one of the things is we do not want to make this political. We want to keep the politics out of this. We want to serve the community as best we can.
Okay, Margaret, I understand. What I'm trying to say here is that one of the tools that we have that makes our group function well is a mutual aid system.
Great. Right.
That's what I'm suggesting. And it is a left-wing idea, but
the thing is the group I belong to is also that way too, but we're Catholic. So what can I say? We help people out through charity and this, that, and the other thing, mutual aid too. So what can I say?
One thing that was just referenced earlier I want to bring up is something that Cornish American Heritage Society has been doing for a few years, which is the travel grant. So about 3 years ago, we decided to help support people traveling to explore their Cornish heritage, whether it be from North America to Cornwall, or from Cornwall to the U.S. to see where people had emigrated to. And one thing that I think was really great about this is that it's given a few people an opportunity to bring other generations with them to explore. I think we've done 6 or 7 travel grants to date, and I think at least 3 of them are multi-generational trips. and Mary was just speaking a moment ago, and Mary was a recipient of the 2026 travel grant and took her family over and just got back, and will be presenting about that. So it's not enough to fully pay for a trip, but hopefully it subsidizes it for young people who might not have the disposable income to make travel that easy, or to encourage people to bring multi-generations with them. So not every grant awardee has been multi-generational trips, but there's been a handful of them. And I think that was one of the reasons why we wanted to start it in the first place. Was there's no better way to fall in love with Cornwall than to expose somebody to Cornwall for the first time in person.
I asked my kids if they would tell me what, a month out after the trip, what the impact was on them. And my son said something about, finally seeing the countryside we had heard about our whole lives was impressive. But he was talking about the creepy photos on our wall. Well, that was my great grandpa and my grandma's family. But now he understands where they came from, and they all, we're talking about a sense of place, and you know, like my daughter lives in Vermont. We live in Washington, but the daughter in Vermont said, she didn't feel like it was going home for her. Coming to the Pacific Northwest is that, but it was going to her roots. And yeah, they all loved it, and they all want to return. And the youngest in our group, my 9-year-old grandson Arlo, said, "It was pretty great. I dream of pasties and I wish they had them here."
They do.
That's great, Mary. I'm looking forward to reading your article and hearing all about it in a future Zoom presentation too.
Yeah. I think food's the key. There you go. Food's always the key. Yeah.
Somebody else new want to share thoughts?
Can I follow up? That ties in nicely. The creepy photos on the wall. Can I tell my story? I'm from the Toronto Cornish Association, Toronto, Ontario. The difference that we have as a Cornish association to everybody else is that we were all first generation Cornish, so we didn't have those creepy photographs on. We had pictures of the beautiful beaches and everything that went around that we brought along with us. So we lived in the present in that sense. So my personal story is perhaps relevant. There was family folklore that I had a Cornish ancestor, but I didn't know anything about it. When I turned up in Toronto, and I came over in 1968, and quickly found out that there was just by chance, there was a Cornish association, and I joined them. The Toronto Cornish Association was really an active group, but what they did was looked at all the history, the culture, the heritage that went on in Cornwall. So they had relatively low interest in genealogy, but I say that because they really did work to list every Cornish person that came to North America, and particularly to Ontario. We don't have a strong mining community in Ontario. So the people that came were the farmers. They came out of Padstow and they ended up in Durham County. And I'm just looking down, Deb Tinkins on. Thank you, Deb, for joining us. She was one of in the area in the Durham County. So we don't have the miners. We don't have this great history that the rest of the US has. So our interest. So going back to Johnny's question, why do we love Cornishness? Good question. Personally, I do. We did end up finding that my ancestor was from Tresco in the Isles of Scilly, but he was a farmer. So why do I love it so much? I love it because it's so different, and it's different in so many ways. The Cornish history, the Cornish culture, and what I did become quite active with the Toronto Cornish, so it forced me to do presentations on everything about going back from prehistoric times through to today, and that was a wonderful story. So Cornwall is so different. So that was one point, and so to answer Johnny's questions, how do we share this? Well, we in the Toronto Cornish, we shared it by these presentations every month. Over the last 30 years, we've had people give presentations. We also support the Cornish heritage organizations. I'll just list some of them: the Cornish Family History Society, the Old Cornwall Society, the Cornish Heritage Trust, the Cornish Archaeological Society, Crescent Kerno, the Institute of Cornish Studies, Gorseth Kerno. These are the people I feel strongly about supporting, and I managed to convince the treasurer of the Toronto Cornish that we would fund these people. So we are corporate members of all of those organizations. What makes us so the question is, how do we share this with my family? My family is the large Toronto Cornish, Durham Cornish people here, and I want to share that. That's my family in terms of Cornish-ness. And so we have shared that. And yesterday, as I mentioned, we had a pub lunch, and I told them all, you better be on. And I see Debbie, I see Deb, and I see a few others. So welcome. Thanks for joining me. How do we make this happen in a big way? Sadly, both Tom and Johnny will know that the Toronto Cornish, we ran out of steam. Sadly, we got aged. A few of us said we just cannot do this anymore with the monthly meetings. But what I'm moving into now is Celtic organizations. And last year we were invited to join the Oakville, which is close to Toronto, Celtic festival. And I turned up with the Cornish flag, with the Cornish pasties and the Cornish pictures. We were welcomed with open arms. And I think that's where are we missing out? I know, I understand, I know Jim Verne had an interview with some time back, making the point that all the North Americans are a smorgasbord, as I think, was it Margaret describing, when you describe your grandchildren, my goodness, they've got a bit of everything there. But to turn up at a Celtic festival, we get welcomed with, there's only a few of us, so you fly the Cornish flag and you are welcomed, and we are different, and people want to know about us. So that's how but I'm going to take Wesley's solution to the third question, is what can the Cornish American Heritage Society? I'll pass on that question. I'm not quite sure, but what you are doing is great, and I much appreciate the work you're doing, including having meetings like this. And I know in the past you've held a lot of webinars. You are in touch with many people. I see Sharon down there has given us a presentation. There are so many people out there that will give presentations, and we have a big audience for them. So I think keep doing what you're doing, and so I tend to be less concerned about the next generation, because I think there's enough of us still very keen to keep this thing going. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments, John.
Yeah, can I chime in here? I'm Nick Booker, as of this spring, Dr. Nick Booker, and out here in Ohio. And first of all, Peter Ann, I just want to say it's really great to see another person who's kind of younger on the call here. That's great. So I think, I draw a lot of inspiration from, as John was alluding to, the sort of broader Celtic umbrella of, Irish, Scottish, Manx, Breton, etc. And first of all, I think that a lot of people in my generation, which is millennials, kind of, next step up from Gen Z, but a lot of people in my generation, in my experience, have been much more interested in culture than in tracing genealogy. And I think those two can go together in a lot of ways, and I think they do go together in a lot of ways. But certainly for me, music and dance has become a central part of my life, and I play around with my group, All Those Who Wander, and when we go out and play shows, I was just out in Cleveland area last week and was playing some music and talking about how it came from Cornwall and how the Cornish American and Cornish Canadian North American community has created all this wonderful culture. And there was a high school student who came up to me afterwards and said, "My grandfather was Cornish, and I've always wanted to go, and I never really knew anything about it." But tell me about this music and like what do you do over there? Like what's good to do in Cornwall? And it was a really helpful conversation, I think. And I think that fundamentally there's a visibility problem with the way that Cornish North American culture is conveyed. And I don't think it's like an operational issue. I don't think anybody's doing anything wrong, but I do think it gets buried under lots of other layers. So, for instance, with the Irish community here in Columbus, Ohio, where I live, I was just out on Friday night playing a concert at a place called Tara Hall, which is a big Irish pub, and everybody knows what Irish music is like, right? I mean, they may not have a really well-informed idea, but everybody thinks they know what Irish music is all about, right? And it's very visible, and I wonder, how we could put out cultural forms and do cultural work that becomes more visible. One of the things I'm thinking about is, am I right that Cornish American Heritage Society doesn't have an Instagram or a TikTok?
I believe that's true.
So that might be a good first step. It's actually really easy now to just start posting from Facebook onto Instagram. Another thing, it's Peter Ann, I mean, I think we need to find a way to be an accepting, pluralistic community with a big umbrella. And I think that can mean being a community that talks about culture and sort of separate conceptually from politics, but also I think we have to recognize that everybody's political as a human being, right? And we're all humans as a part of the community. And one of the beautiful things about the Irish associations here in Columbus is that you get people on totally different sides of the spectrum who will come together, and everybody's dancing and everybody's singing Molly Malone and everybody's having a pint of Guinness. There are these things that can bring us together, these cultural tools that bring us together, that don't deny, what your political alignment is or your philosophical beliefs are or what your religion is. That's big for the Irish, certainly.
Yeah.
But they connect us anyway. They connect us across these boundaries. And I think that's really important to have these sort of pluralistic communities that are really focused on culture and that can spread online and on Instagram and Facebook, So
Yeah, I hope I haven't in any way implied that that's not what I'm interested in.
no, that's what I heard. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, I
Yeah.
just wanted to, it was sort of the left-wing comment was just an incidental. That's part of the tagline, and that's what came out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, it wasn't, it just is.
Yeah. That's cool. Very cool. Like you said, we all come from different perspectives.
I like your Pope. I think your Pope is cool.
Oh, very good. Hey, and he's an American. What can we say?
Yeah.
We're tired of Italians. We're tired of the 450 years of Italian popes, you know. So anyway.
Right. One of the things that I think may also be helpful for people who are of mixed background, which most even the youth in Cornwall today are, a lot of them are of mixed, yeah, with usually other Celtic nations, but now increasingly with just people from outside of the UK in general, and or they're adopted into Cornish families. I know of a former counselor for Mebion Kerno, who are he was adopted from the US. I'm blanking on his name at the moment, but
wow.
Yeah, there was the whole thing of this. The UK equivalent of the State Department wanted to kick him out because he didn't have his paperwork in order, or his parents didn't have his paperwork in order. So, but fortunately, he's been allowed to stay. So, you know, there's Cornish people come in all shapes and stories, and they, yeah, all shapes and all stories, all paths.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Everybody does.
Yeah.
Everybody does.
So, you know, and where was I going with this? It's got from the Pope to here, and there was a point somewhere.
Hey, we're good. We're good. We're good. Don't worry about it, Petra. We're all good here. You know, the common ground thing and making sure that we come together and get the history out there. But I also
the history. What I was saying, because like I'm also Jewish. So and there's actually this really fantastic history of Jewish people in Cornwall. And I feel like that, you know, that these kinds of, you know, and there's still a huge community of Jews in Cornwall. So, you know, I think that, you know, especially for people who are, you know, are different, you know, a bunch of different things, it would be really helpful for people to understand, hey, no, you, like, there's way more ways to being Cornish than just being like, I don't know, Methodist.
Has anyone ever given thought to pursuing with the younger kids, have them look at what the Cornish have done in this country? Because most really don't care what's going on over anywhere else. They are more concerned about the family, you know, the people that came to this country. How did they contribute? Because they hear about the Italians doing this or doing this, and they want to know, okay, what did my ethnic group contribute here? And I think
a lot.
Yeah, at the gathering in Calumet, there was a presentation about famous people of Cornish descent in North America. Who was that? Was it David?
David, I'm not thinking his name, from Minnesota.
David Downing.
Yeah, David Downing.
He gave a very good presentation.
Yeah, so I think that's a good one. I don't know if it's recorded anywhere, but he had a good PowerPoint and went through all these people of Cornish descent who had made their mark in the U.S. and Canada.
Yeah, unfortunately, we didn't get that one recorded, but maybe that's something that we should reach out to David to do, see if he would be willing to record that same presentation.
Yeah.
That would be great.
You know,
I'd be interested in it.
When I taught, I taught for over 20 years, seniors. And what I used to have, one of the assignments that I had was to have each student look in their background somewhere or find a neighbor somewhere. I didn't care how they chose, but to find people who contributed in their community, what the ethnic background was and what they did. They weren't famous, but they did something that people in that area thought was pretty darn great. And I know, like in Ironwood, the first mayor was from Cornwall. So, I mean, there are things like that kids could get interested in. And they have so much available to them today because there's so much stuff online, and they're so good at doing that. They don't even have to go into a library anywhere to find things. They can talk to people, but there are a lot of things online. Old newspapers, for example, are a treasure trove. And that way, I mean, I found that kids got really interested in that, because they were linking it to their very own area. And so it was fun for them. They gave me something to grade.
The all important something to grade paper.
Yeah, that's actually that sounds like a really fantastic assignment. Do you mind if I steal that idea?
By
Great
all means,
idea.
take it and run
Mm.
with it, because it brought forth, and then they ended up, some of the kids who their subject was still alive did oral histories. So we had that to contribute as well. So I mean, it more, the kids added to it, and that's what you would find. But no, take the ideas. It's great. I think a lot of other people, I still enjoy doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
That's a-
just Mary, did you get my DM with my contact info?
Oh, no, was it in the messages?
Yes, it's in the messages. I'm so sorry. I just wanted to make sure that wasn't
We'll have to
didn't get
look.
lost.
Yeah.
It
My
was
children's middle school had a culture fair every year. They don't anymore now that my grandson's there, but it was our third child before she finally decided to do Cornwall.
Hmm.
But she did a great job, and she really learned a lot. And then plus she was able to tell her friends, about being Cornish. So I wish schools would do that more.
yeah.
Wait,
I'm excited about our upcoming gathering in Mineral Point in September. Our keynote speaker is Nicola Lloyd with Global Cornish, and she's really working to connect Cornwall businesses, institutions, organizations with the diaspora throughout the world. And we've talked about, like, is there an opportunity for internships, summer internships, where American or Canadian people of Cornish descent can go back and work for a business over the course of the summer and gain some experience.
Great
Nothing's
idea.
formed yet, but like
I would do that.
she's working with the Cornish Pirates rugby team and a number of businesses. So I'm really excited to get in a room with all of us and kind of spitball some of these ideas and see if we can get some legs on it and create some new programs in September.
That sounds great, Johnny. That
Great
sounds
idea.
fantastic. Yeah, I think the important thing is just got to figure out what we need to do and how to go about doing it, and seeing what's out there. Because I know even when I went up to the one for California, and Wes wasn't there, were you? No, you didn't come up to Grass Valley. The gathering was a lot smaller, but there's a central location for the Cornish people. It'd be interesting to know what they're doing in that community with their kids, who's there. And that would be something to find out and see how that works. Now it's going to inspire me to go figure out what Cornish people are in Watsonville. And if I've only found one so far from Red Ruth, of all places. Mm-hmm. But kind of go through and go to the Historical Society and see what I can dig up now on the Cornish people here, if there were any. Besides, I know one family, but do they know that they're Cornish? Probably not.
Well, we've got about 10 minutes left in our meeting today. Are there probably time for a couple of people who haven't shared yet to offer their perspective? Anybody want to speak up that hasn't had an opportunity yet before we kind of open it up and wind down the meeting? Pamela, you got comments?
Yes, and my mother was Cornish from Red Ruth, but we grew up in different parts of the world. She had a knack for bumping into Cornish people wherever we lived. Don't tell me how, but she said that there's like an invisible thread connecting the Cornish, and I've never forgotten that. But how she sustained our Cornishness, well, it was simply by example. First of all, a lot of family stories, funny, tragic, totally bizarre, but we all grew up with these wonderful myths and legends and stories about the family. Books by and about the Cornish, our bookshelves were full of them. And of course, Cornish folk music and pasties. Wherever we moved to a new house or a new town or a new country, first order of the day was Cornish pasties. And whenever my mother visited anybody around the world, brothers, cousins, nephews, and so on, first order of the day, go out with the rolling pin, roll out the pastry, and make a batch of Cornish pasties. Things like this, I think, keep the generations very tuned into Cornishness. But I love the idea of the kids doing projects. where they have to do research, and also internships over in Cornwall. I think that's a fabulous idea.
I think
to
that's
get
a
that
great
very
idea.
authentic insight. And I always recommend when anybody goes back to Cornwall, go into the closest cemetery. Each grave is like a historic thumbprint of that family, where they ended up: Australia, South Africa, Indonesia, all the sort of mining areas of the world. A lot of that is recorded on these gravestones as different generations died around the world. So there's so many sort of ways of incorporating the Cornish diaspora in the minds of youth as well, and as historic research projects. Somebody, you've got 5 minutes left, so I'll cut it off there.
Well, one more person who hasn't shared yet want to speak up before we kind of take the meeting to its closure.
Can I point the finger at Sharon?
Sharon, you need to unmute.
Oh, Sharon's muted. Can we ask to unmute? Not working.
Unmute.
Is that better?
Bingo.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Oh, there's
okay.
Sharon.
So I'm in Liverpool at the moment. I live in Ireland, so I'm an exile. I'm Cornish born and bred. I'm from Redruth, and I've been living in Ireland for far too long, unfortunately. But anyway, I'm on my way home, so I'm just stopped off in Liverpool on my way back to Cornwall. Some of you know me, some of you don't probably, but I'm going to be out in Mineral Point, so it'd be nice to catch up with some of you that I don't know on a personal level. But I'm a doctor of Cornish studies, and my area specialty is the Cornish diaspora, the mining diaspora, and I did my PhD on the Cornish and Latin America, which was a part of the world that had received little to no attention at all. That was a long time ago, it was 20 odd years ago now, but I've carried on looking at that area of the world and trying to integrate it more closely into the Cornish narrative of overseas migration. And over the last few years, I've been doing an awful lot of work on Mexico and working with the communities in Mexico to explore their Cornish heritage with a lot of success, it has to be said. So the area that I'm thinking of particularly is north of Mexico City. So it's the what they call the Comarca Minera de Hidalgo, so it's called Mexico's Little Cornwall, Pachuca, Real del Monte, Minera del Chico, that sort of area. There's the world's largest pastel festival, takes place there. The town Real del Monte is twinned with my hometown Redruth. We have a beautiful cemetery there, the Cornish cemetery, the English cemetery. There are hundreds and hundreds of inhumations of Cornish people. It is the finest cemetery of its type in the Latin Americas, beautifully and lovingly cared for by the Cornish community there. I help to raise funds for that from time to time to keep things ticking over there. But most recent project that I was involved with was to provide Cornish Tartar material for a pipe and drum band that's been set up there called the St. Piran's Pipe and Drum Band. And again, that's engaging youth in things like music and dance. And also there's a lot of interest in football. So football was brought to Mexico by Cornish miners. I was interviewed extensively over the summer period, including at the BBC in London about that. So again, that's a youthful pursuit. You know, youth are playing football, so there's a chance to get at people that way as well and engender an interest amongst young people. But the pipe band, of course, it's not just all about genealogy, although there's an interest in who were my ancestors and where did they come from in Cornwall. And of course, somebody mentioned cemeteries. You go into the cemetery, then it will say like Isaac Richards of Bragg, and look around, is so and so from Camborne. So there's definitely links back to Cornwall there. But engaging youth in music and in performative arts, it's both visual and audio. And it's different than, load of faded sepia photographs that people pore over. Also, there's an interest in the Cornish language there. I've noticed I run the Cousin Jack's I have a website which has a masses of free to use information. It's called Cousin Jack's World, but there's a Facebook page linked to that, and I know some of you were members of that. It's got about roughly coming up for 3,500 members. It's more successful than I ever imagined it would be, and that just doesn't do things like genealogy. It actually advertises events like the forthcoming Cornish Fest in Mineral Point, and also the Calumet Festival that's just the Pasty Fest that's just gone by. The Cornish American Heritage Society's gig will be on there. Lots of people share information about what's going on in their neck of the woods. And cousins have actually met each other through my site, putting people back in touch with each other. It's a really great forum for exploring what it is to be Cornish. And I'm struck. I live in Donegal. I live near Letterkenny. And when I go home to Cornwall, there is so much more culturally happening in Cornwall than Ireland. And everybody looks to Ireland as like the example of like the Celtic tiger and, the Celtic vibe. There's loads going on in Cornwall. Virtually every weekend, there's a festival of some description. I mean, the Pasty Festival is in a week or two's time. There's a festival of food in Penzance. There's a festival in St. Ives, and there's Yarwennick Festival in Penryn, all on the same weekend. Masses. It's really, really thriving Cornish culture at the moment. It's cool to be Cornish. Cool to be Cornish.
Thanks, Sharon. That's
Thank
great.
you, Sharon.
I think one thing that's clear to me from this hour is that there's a lot of people here that are very interested in this topic, have a lot of great ideas and passion behind it. And I think the answer to what can CHS do is I think we can continue this conversation. This is not a one and done conversation, but I'd propose that we establish a special interest group that meets regularly, whether it be quarterly, monthly, I'm not quite sure. But let's get back together and keep talking about this, and not only talk, but figure out what actions we can take as a collective group to try to make the world the way that we want it to be in the future. What can we do to explore these ideas? What can we do to create curriculum? What can we do to encourage travel? We will take this on. Tom, myself, the other officers will establish a forum for us to meet more regularly and have these conversations. So again, thank you all for coming this evening. This has been great. I've loved all the ideas, and we've recorded this. We will get it up on YouTube channel shortly, so you can watch it again or share it with those who weren't able to attend. So thank you.
Thank you, Johnny, very much.
Thank you.
Just a quick note, I put in the chat the signers of the Declaration of Independence who had Cornish roots. So we can find these things out very easily.
That's great. Well, I will see some of you guys in Mineral Point here in a couple weeks.
That's right.
Sharon,
Yes.
will you be in Bodmin, Sharon?
Yes. Yeah.
I'll see you there.
Oh, you're coming over. Oh, great.
I am, and I need one of your books signed, please.
I'm doing several talks, and the film has been shown in just look on my website, the whole itinerary's on there.
I miss every one of those, but we'll make it happen one day. Thank you very much.
You might well be around for some of them.